only show that's 3 dimensions away from ugly Sonic being the Sonic we know and love. I'm your host, 3D Jake, and today we're looking at Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 came out this year, and I believe it was supposed to come out last year, but because of COVID and everything, it was pushed to this year. And I believe it was actually supposed to come out in February of this year, but then they pushed it to the April, which I kind of wish it was February because I like movies in February. That's just me, but that's fine. So Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is basically a continuation of the first movie, which starred James Masters, Ben Schwartz, Jim Carrey, and so forth. And this time around, the movie is joined by newcomers Idris Elba as the Great Knuckles, and I believe her name is Shannon something as Tails, and of course Shamar Moore, who is the fiance of James Marsden's wife in the movie, her sister's fiance. And so basically, the plot is they have to go to a wedding. Like James Marsden is going to a wedding, Donut Lord's going to a wedding with his wife, and they're going to go to a wedding. And I was like, okay. And I know some people don't like the wedding and the Hawaii stuff, but I love the Hawaii stuff. I think it's really great. I really like the first Sonic. I know some people have mixed feelings about it. I love the first Sonic movie. First Sonic movie is a really good movie. I love Jim Carrey in it. I thought this was fun. It was just what it needed to be. And sometimes if I need a good video game adaptation movie, I'll watch that. That or the first Mortal Kombat movie. And so I watched that and I was like, oh, this is such a great movie. And I went in this movie wanting to love it, but I didn't love it. I feel like compared to the first one it felt like with the sequel it was too overpacked. Like, I feels like, okay, we had to bring Jim Carrey back because obviously it's Jim Carrey, so you bring him back as Donut Lord, not Donut Lord, but Robotnik, who becomes Eggman, and then you bring in Knuckles. And I will say this, I kind of wish that, they would have kept Knuckles and Jim Carrey out of the movie, because as much as I love Jim Carrey, I just feel like he's barely in the movie, and the movie really doesn't need him at all in the movie. Like, I'm sitting here watching the movie going, do we really need Jim Carrey in this movie? Like, I understand we have to have Jim Carrey in the movie, but, like, why? Why is Jim Carrey in this movie? I mean, it makes no sense for him to be in this movie, because it's the only reason he's in the movie is because the script allowed him to be in the movie. That's it. And I love Jim Carrey. I'm a big fan of Ace Ventura, The Mask, and such forth. And I love his performance as Robotnik. But in this one, it just felt like kind of forced. Like, it felt like they didn't really need Jim Carrey in the movie. Like, it feels like they could have done this without Jim Carrey and just the whole movie with Knuckles. But, which in the third act kind of feels forced in a way, because Knuckles, is like, has the cliche of always the villain becoming good at the end. And Robotnik's in this thing, and giant robot. And I mean, I like the giant robot aspect, but it felt forced. It felt like this. It almost felt like Ninja Turtles. Okay, the Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Out of the Shadows. I like that movie, but it kind of feels like in the end with Krang, that feels forced. Like, it feels like, and that I always felt like when watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Out of the Shadows, the whole Krang stuff felt forced. It felt like that was forced in, compared to just like it would have been Shredder and Bebop and Rocksteady and Baxter Stockman. And it just felt like Krang, and it felt like Krang could have been in there, but then in the third act of the movie where, like, the Technodrome and all that stuff, it just felt like that was all forced in there at the last minute because they think they were going to get another film. And I'm like, that's what it feels like here. It feels like they didn't think they were going to get another Jim Carrey performance in this movie. Like, this might be Jim Carrey's last performance, so we're just going to hurry up and shove this stuff in there so we don't need him again. And so, and I'm kind of glad they did that, because he might not do a third film. And so I feel like, I just feel like this movie felt more like overpacked, rushed compared to the first movie. First movie, it felt natural. Like, it was a road trip movie and a buddy comedy, and you get to see Sonic do some fun stuff. Well, on this one, I feel like I like the aspect of him being a superhero, doing the superhero stuff. I love that aspect of it. I thought that was great, and I love, like, the banter between him and Donut Lord, even though Donut Lord is barely, he's more of a, like it was him and Sonic were the stars. I mean, he's more like, I would like to say, more like Dave's role in Alvin the Chipmunks 2, where Dave is in the hospital and the Chipmunks are on their own kind of thing. It's kind of like that. where he's in the wedding. The Donut Lord's at a wedding, so basically Sonic's on his own with Tails, and then Knuckles and Donut, and of course Robotnik are trying to kill them. So that's kind of what we're at in this movie, and so that kind of bums me out, because it's like they had such a great chemistry, and and also I kind of wish they focused on the superhero aspect of it, made it more fun. Instead, it's just like that. You see that for like 5 minutes, and it's over with, and then it's mostly him on the run from Knuckles, and I was like, I guess, and then they jump and go to different locations, and I hate that movies where they just go to different locations. It feels like in movies when they jump, if the story they're unsure of the story, then they say, okay, we'll jump to a new location. That's what always feels like in movies. If you notice, like with Thor 2 even, like they go to different locations when, oh, well, how do we advance the plot? Let's just throw them in a different location, and we'll figure out everything in that location. And then they do that a lot of times, which, granted, the first movie kind of did somewhat of that, but it was more lenient, because it was a road trip movie. But in this one, it felt more like, okay, they're just jumping through different places, and I was like, okay. And I will say, I do like Idris Elba as Knuckles. I love Idris Elba, and I think as Knuckles, he's great in the movie. I think Jim Carrey's still great, even though I kind of felt like the movie didn't need him. I think Tails was great, and Sonic, as always, is hilarious and fun. There's this funny scene with the chili cheese dog, like, don't come in. He has a little puppet like going, don't come in, chili cheese dogs, woo! Like, I thought that was hilarious, And I will say, Donut Lord's fun. The catfish, the Operation, fake wedding was kind of funny. Like, I actually was catfish wedding. Was it catfish wedding or fake wedding? But I thought that was pretty funny. That was funny. Like, I know some people hated the Hawaii stuff, but I loved it. I actually originally thought the Hawaii scene, I'm like, that guy probably loves Donut Lord's wife. He probably dated, he loves her, and he's trying to marry the sister to make her jealous so he can get with her, and I thought that was what he was trying to do. I'm like, he doesn't love her, he's trying to get with Donut Lord's wife. And I'm like, I could see this coming from a mile away. He's going to, at the wedding, say, I want to marry her. And I was waiting for that, and never happened. Instead, it was like, okay, he's a CIA agent, which I'm like, my theory was more believable than this. I'm like, so you're telling me it was all an undercover ruse so that way they could get closer to Sonic by marrying the sister and all this stuff? Like, what would have happened if Sonic wouldn't have come through to the Hawaii? What would have happened? They would have just got married and lived happily ever after? I mean, stuff like that is when I'm like, that's kind of crazy. But I did like the Hawaii stuff. I thought that was pretty fun. The whole movie would have been Sonic on vacation in Hawaii, and then Knuckles and Tails and Robotnik come through there. I would have been fine with that. Happily fine with this movie. But unfortunately, that stuff makes me, the other stuff, there's portal hopping kind of thing, and just no locations, and if it had been more of the Hawaii stuff, I would have been fine, but instead the portal hopping kind of makes, is it better than the first film? No, I kind of feel like it's a downgrade. But at the same time, it's just my opinion. If I had to give this movie a grade, I'd probably give it a C+. Thank you.